I just bought the fastest 52 volt electric dirt bike you can buy for under $1,300. So here's exactly how the XE100 comes shipped from the factory, partially assembled. And here's everything else that came in the package, starting with the charger. This is a 58.8 volt 4 amp output charger, so it's a 52 volt bike. Got a 14-inch front wheel with a 190 millimeter disc brake rotor, front fender, side fairings, front number plate, bar pad, hardware for the rear shock, bar mounts, right side foot peg, display, LED headlight, user manual, toolkit, hardware for the pegs and the bars, 2 keys, and 2 brackets that I'm not quite sure what these are for, though since there's 2 of them, I'm suspecting they're for the side fairings. Let's go see how easy it is to put this bike together. The front axle comes with 2 wheel spacers. The wider one goes on the side where the brake caliper mounts. I didn't like how much play there was between the headlight and the bracket, so I decided to add a few spacers to fill the gap. I want the rear brake hose to route on the right side of the headlight. It's just going to be a lot less tension if I route it that way. All right, it looks like if you want to run the side plastics, you're gonna have to take the battery out so you can get access to the back side of these side panels. Whoa, so I was not expecting this. Check this out, the stock battery has a BMS that has a discharge current of 100 amps. That's like 30 to 35 more amps than a Tuttio or a Yozma. So that means that this bike with the stock battery is able to put out over 5,000 watts continuously. Unlike the Yozmas and the Tuttios, where power claimed is just peak power for a short period, the Xekoya XE100 comes with a battery that's able to do a lot more. Here it is fully assembled. It ended up taking a little over an hour since obviously I was filming. You don't have to run these side plastics, but I think it looks better with it on. I really like how these look in comparison to the Yozmas where it's just bare frame. I think this looks closer to a traditional dirt bike, kind of like what's on my KTM or even my CRF 300 where it sweeps up front. I'm gonna hook this bike up to the charger for a few hours and then we'll take it out for its first ride. While the bike's charging, let's check out this new drone that I just got to get you guys some better footage. I went with the Hoverair all-in-one bundle, which came with 2 extra batteries, beacon, joysticks, carry bag, all sorts of adapters, and some ND filters. And of course, the new X1 Pro Max. Since I'm not as familiar with this type of equipment, I decided to get some help from my buddy Elmer.
This is coming from someone who's only ever had one drone, who at this point in time is very outdated, but you can either control it on your phone through the app, or it does come with controllers, so that way, if I'm doing this right, they both click in. And then just to use my phone for a demonstration, ignore that. That's my own bad. Pop it in there, and if I would have had the app running on my phone and the camera was flying, I can control it. This one does, I think, either the angle or the zoom of the camera, and this one is able to use it to take a photo as well, all while having the screen of what the drone sees and how you can control it.
And since I do a lot of filming on my own, I wanted to focus today's testing on the self-following features. So without any controls, this is supposed to follow me right now?
Yep, for the most part. And checking the display, he's running around. And if you can see on the display, does a pretty good job. Yeah, it's tracking you. It has you focused.
The beacon by itself allows you to reposition the drone manually in case you are looking for a specific angle for your shot. The X1 Pro Max is able to track moving objects without the beacon being mounted, but I find that it does a much better job tracking my bike, for example, if I have the beacon on me, like in my pocket or mounted on the handlebar. It does a pretty good job keeping up, but it tends to run out of steam around 25 miles per hour, depending how windy it is outside. We'll do more detailed testing on the drone later in the video. All right, first ride on the Xekoya XE100. First thing that I want to test out is the speedometer accuracy and what kind of speed we can get on all 3 modes. All right, starting on mode 1. Our speed seems to be capped at 24 miles per hour, 22 on the GPS. Let's see what mode 2 does. Showing 39.8 on the display, 36 miles per hour on the GPS. So far the speedometer is pretty accurate. It's about 3 miles per hour off, which is certainly not the worst that I've had so far recently. Though I am curious to see if this thing will actually go 50 miles per hour like Xekoya says. Let's put it in mode 3. So that's not too far off, 47 miles per hour on the GPS, 52 on the display. So the speedo is about 5 miles per hour off at the very highest speed. So 3 miles an hour slower than the manufacturer's claim top speed is not bad. Holy I've definitely tested quite a few more bikes this past year that are a lot more inaccurate as far as the speedometer and claim top speed than that. I think 47 miles per hour for $1,400 bucks, that's $100 more than a Yozma IN10, is an insane deal. The closest spec bike I can think of to compare to this would be a Heybike Villain, which I thought was a pretty good value. I think with tuning, the stock controller and stock battery, I was able to get close to 50 miles per hour, 52. And completely stock, it went 44 miles per hour, but this is completely untouched. We just took this out of the box and it goes 47 miles per hour on the GPS without any sort of tuning. Now looking closely at the battery, it does say it's got a 100 amp continuous output, which is certainly a much higher discharge than what you get out of a Tuttio or a Yozma. So this thing truly comes with a little over 5,000 watts of power. And unlike the Heybike Villain, this is not going to be limited as far as modifications in the future, since it shares the same frame platform as the Yozma IN10 and the Valtinsu EM-5. There are plenty of aftermarket modifications available for this bike, such as the Amorge batteries that you can get from Econic or directly from Amorge. The Soshin FW22 motor, that's going to be a direct bolt-on replacement to this. You can do the Supermoto wheel set or even a larger wheel set like what comes on the Pro models, 1714, if you do a lot of off-road riding. I personally have an 86 mile per hour Yozma IN10, which I have a full build series on, so check that out if you're interested, but all of those modifications fit on this bike. But my favorite thing about this bike so far is the performance for what you get straight out of the factory, no mods. I'm having a hard time thinking of what goes 47 miles per hour for $1,400. I know there's quite a few budget option bikes out there that are 60 volt and 72 volt that are pretty close in price, like the X1 Spark and X1 Max, but this one has a sturdier frame and it's able to deliver this kind of speed with a 52 volt system. And this battery is a 30 amp hour, so much higher capacity than what you get on the Yozmas, which is 23 amp hour. Then on top of all that, you can also get an extra $100 off this bike by using discount code PATOUTDOORS, so that would be $1,300 to get this much bike. But let's see how the Xekoya actually performs in the trails, get a better feel for the suspension and brakes, see what kind of lap time we can get in comparison to the similar bikes. I know the Heybike Villain that I tested recently, I got 1 minute and 52 seconds on. Yozma IN10 Pro, which is the larger 60 volt bike, minute 48. So I'm thinking that the XE100 is kind of in between those two. I'm guessing I'm going to get something close to 1 minute and 50 seconds. Now I'm just using an iPhone timer, which I have to reach to start and stop it. So the time's going to be 1 or 2 seconds off, but I'll put the actual time up on screen. Oh man, this is definitely the smallest bike that I've tested in a little while. Definitely sits a lot lower than the D2 Pro and the Yozma IN10 Pro. A little smaller than the RTR as well. Oh, the ground's a little wet. 1412 wheel set's definitely a little rougher than the 1714, but still doing it pretty good. Feeling pretty good so far. Oh yeah, I think we're gonna get faster than the Villain. Oh yeah, what was that, like 1 minute and 43? That is a noticeable amount faster than the Heybike Villain. Now this thing actually got a faster lap time than the IN10 Pro, which is odd, but it feels a lot torquier. I think it has a lot to do with the controller that's installed. This is the Votol EM-5, and then you combine that with a higher amp output battery, it produces a lot more torque than the Yozma, even the IN10 Pro. I also really like the throttle modularity, so even in mode 3, the throttle's not too jumpy, so most beginners should be able to hop on this bike and get on mode 3 right away and not feel too intimidated. You know what, let's try to do a hill climb with this thing. We're gonna do a really steep, rough descent here, and then we're gonna climb up the back ravine. Ooh. Yeah, this stuff is rough, but has no problem doing it. I know it's hard to get on camera, but this is actually a pretty long and steep hill climb. This is on the very back side of my property. Let's see how the Xekoya XE100 handles a hill climb test. Oh, dude. Didn't even hesitate. That has so much more torque than the Tuttio. Let's accelerate from a stop again just to get a good feel for this torque. Shoot. Yeah. It wants to jump forward. This thing is quick. Now I am kind of curious to see what the Votol controller is like as far as tuning. I'm a little bit more familiar with the far driver controllers. I don't even know if this thing needs a dongle to connect to the controller. I'm gonna have to look more into that before we start doing any modifications, but I don't really see the need to modify this thing since it's pretty capable in factory form. You know what, let's try out this Hoverair X1 Pro, see if we can get some nice footage for y'all. Got the beacon mounted on the handlebar. All right, let's see what the footage looks like in cycling mode.
Middle, cycling mode.
Now this is my favorite setting as it flies low to the ground and relatively close behind you. If you listen closely, you'll hear the beacon beeping, trying to warn me to slow down as I start to pull away from the drone. If you look closely at the speedometer on the bike, the beacon starts to beep as soon as I exceed 26 miles per hour, so the Hoverair rated max speed is actually spot on. You know what, let's try out the different modes.
360 degrees spin.
Let's try orbit.
5 feet. Orbit.
I'm assuming bird's eye just goes up.
16 feet. Bird's eye.
I was hoping that it would have the ability to follow me in bird's eye view, but it's still a cool shot regardless. That's pretty slick. I think ski mode is just like the cycling mode, but it's supposed to follow a little bit higher.
Middle, ski mode.
That's pretty sweet.
Cycling mode.
You know what, let's see how the X1 does in the woods. I'm thinking it's going to be a lot more challenging for the Hoverair drone since there's a bunch of branches and tree limbs in the way of the trail, but let's see how it does in cycling mode. I'm pretty surprised at how well the X1 Pro Max did in the wooded trails. I'm cruising between 20 to 25 miles per hour during this trail ride, and it had no issues following my route and managed to avoid the trees along the path. Now that is a pretty sweet tool to have, especially if you like to film by yourself. If you guys want to check out the Hoverair X1 Pro, I'll leave a link to the listing in the description below, though I highly suggest that you go with the bundle that has multiple batteries since each one seems to last about 15 minutes. So I gotta say, I do feel a little bit cramped on this. I'm 5'7", and just right here when I'm turning, my knees just come pretty close to the handlebars. I hope Xekoya comes out with a Pro model with a larger wheel set and taller handlebar rise. See, even if you're leaning into a turn, feet on the pegs, the peg actually comes super close to the ground. So Xekoya, if you're listening, please come out with a Pro model. It doesn't even need to have more power. I think it just needs to be a little bit bigger to make it more adult friendly as far as comfort. But overall, I think this is a pretty sweet bike. This is kind of what I wish the IN10 was from the factory. Then I probably wouldn't have upgraded mine all the way immediately. I would have spent more time enjoying the bike with the factory parts if it had this much power. Stock suspension and brakes seem appropriate for the frame size. Stock tires have pretty good traction when you have it below 20 psi. I noticed that Xekoya shipped this bike with 33 psi of air pressure front and rear, so make sure if you get one of these bikes that you check your tire pressure and lower them before you hit the trails. It actually makes a huge difference in off-road traction. But I do really like the look of the stock plastics. I like that it has these side fairings, and they went with a more subtle color combo. Nothing too flashy like the Valtinsus, though this bike also comes in red. Now let me know what you guys think of the Xekoya XE100. Do you think this is a good alternative to a Yozma IN10? Comment below if you think there's a better value bike than this for $1,400. If you want to check out more information on the XE100, I'll leave a link to their listing in the description below. You can also get yourself $100 off this bike by using discount code PATOUTDOORS. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, want to keep up with some of my projects and some of my reviews, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn your bell notification on. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching.